There we go. So hopefully you guys are seeing my presentation. And it says AI Sparks for PLC. Thank you, ChatGPT, for a snappy title, because otherwise they'd all just be called AI and what happened last night. That's kind of the way I feel about it lately. And the inspiration for this is, all of the data dives that we go to, the team meetings that I've been in, and just this hope for the past however many years that technology is actually going to save us time. So one of my favorite sayings from Notebook LM is that the people that designed this tool thought that we could go from information, just this overwhelming amount of information that we have, to insight. And then one of the things that I see so often in meetings, especially in elementary, is that we have these PLC meetings, and by the time we get done discussing students and looking at the way kids' scores have fallen, planning time is up, and there's never any time actually left in that meeting to actually create anything based on the data, because planning periods are so short. So that last little arrow there is to take all of these insights that we can get and actually put them into action and save time to actually create some things together. So hopefully we're going to see some ways to use AI to actually do that. So quick little intro. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Stacy Lovedahl. I am the Western DTL consultant. And before that, my background is as a middle school science teacher here in Catawba County. And I was an instructional technology facilitator. And I joke and say that they gave me one internet connection in my classroom about 23 years ago, and a projector that was the size of a suitcase, and technology has been getting smaller since then, but also just seems to have been taking up more and more of my time in terms of just the things that it can do. So with that being said, if you are in the slide deck, and now we have 2 QR codes on the same screen, but if you would jump over here to this Padlet and either click on the link, or you can also do this on a second device if you just want to scan the QR code. And I've got 3 questions I would love for you to answer. And if you did not get the link to the presentation, I'm going to pop that in the chat just in case. And I'll also put the Padlet link in the chat just in case that makes it easier.
Think of this right now. Everyone, what you told me. Down to that I crashed the bed. What is going on? What's going on? My kid fell into your jungle.
Unajua kuna those dumb days wakati watoto hawakuwa
The whole flight never got out. Hands folded underneath the
watu
blanket.
walikuwa mnakaa hapo.
Okay, so let me click on my Padlet link and put it over here where I can see it. Thank you guys for taking a minute to do that. I love Padlets, all the new features in Padlet. We've got, I feel like they have really stepped up their game as far as all of the features they have. Either they have added a ton more features, or I just didn't realize how many features they actually had. The I Can't Draw feature is one of my favorites. And then this poll feature is also one of the things that I've just been having a ton of fun playing with. So let me just check and make sure. Can you guys see the Padlet on your screen? Am I sharing correctly? Okay, great. So this first question here, since we're starting off with PLCs, is just, to get a handle on, just the frequency of people using PLCs or being able to attend PLCs for those of us who are still in buildings or, attending PLC meetings, or if you aren't, if you're outside of the classroom now, just kind of remembering back, that would be, totally fine to answer that question that way. And then the second question is just thinking about how your PLC was able to, just really look at, what did you do in your PLCs? Was it focused on data? Did you, try to squeeze in some data conversations, but then other things, what were those conversations like? So, and if you're wondering how all of those awesome emojis got themselves in there, one of my favorite ways, just real low-key way to use ChatGPT is to ask it to just add emojis to things. So I created the poll questions, but then I popped it over into ChatGPT and said, hey, add emojis to this, and it totally did. So it's a fun way to just kind of snazz up anything. And then number 3 was all about, just kind of trying to identify obstacles that get in the way of things. So rather than me just assuming. So I'm going to look at our results and see how that goes. So how often does your PLC use student data to drive instruction? We have about 56% of people saying always, 36% saying sometimes, and 4% saying rarely. So that's pretty good. Really, these conversations are really focused on looking at data. So number 2, the second question, PLC collaboration. How does your PLC currently approach student data analysis? And the results are showing that we have about 17% saying that each teacher reviews their own class data independently. So we're looking at, kind of looking that separately. And then 39% are saying we discuss trends as a PLC, but don't always act on them. So, and can look at maybe, some of the reasons behind that. I'd love to have a chat about that a little bit. And then 34% to almost 35% saying we analyze data together and make decisions together based on the data. And then about 9%, 8.7% saying not sure how my PLC uses the student data. So that's, about almost 70% saying discussing it together, analyzing together, but maybe the action part is hanging people up. And then the third question here is, what's the biggest obstacle to your PLCs using student data effectively? And so results are showing 5% lack of unstructured time, so that's pretty low. So time is not holding people up. Limited training on data analysis. Okay, so we can talk about that. Resistance to changing instructional change in instructional planning. So that's only 15%. And 45% limited time to create actionable interventions. So hopefully we'll get some ideas in this session, because if there's one thing AI is supposed to help us do, it can do things quickly. And so if we can just make it do the things we need it to do, then that'll be good. So thank you guys for answering those questions. So, and then I've got a comment here in the chat. Shannon says, as a coach, I see a variety of questions. 1 and 2, and can answer all 4 for the last question. Yeah, there's if Padlet let us have an all of the above, I think it'd be really helpful. I ran out. I had a couple of options here, especially with poll question number 2, where I needed a 5th answer choice, which would have been all of the above. But I didn't want to throw any of my options out, so I agree with that. Okay, so jumping into the agenda, what I'd like to get through today, and especially focus on showing you some things in Notebook LM, is how PLCs can use AI to address especially this, the insight part of it with the data, and and then getting from insights to action. And Notebook LM is where we're going to start. And then if I can skim over to School AI, I definitely will. And if there's a part 2, then I think it'll be about some other AI tools. And if you guys have some comments about this along the way, we'll have time for Q&A, but also unmute or turn your camera on, add in the chat, because I can see the chat as we're going along. Make sure that as I'm talking here, if you've got questions or comments, that you stop me. This is your time, and you have made sure you carved it out this afternoon. So I definitely want to make sure that this time is useful for you and that we get any questions answered or comments out as we go along. So just a quick little, kind of putting us in the mindset of PLCs. We kind of know that PLCs are this structured sort of collaborative time for teacher teams to get together and reflect on their teaching practices. And there's an awful lot of background information on how PLCs are supposed to go. So I've got some resources at the end that we can dig into as humans to take a look at it. But we're going to see here in a minute, we humans have a limited amount of time to actually go back and review this body of knowledge for all of this information. But that capacity, that time limit is something that really holds us up. But my favorite sentence lately is whenever I'm confronted with a year's worth of data or information that I need to download into my brain is, I might not have time for that, but you know who has time? AI has time. So why don't I just figure out how to upload that into a data source that then I can access and have it connect all of those things together for me and put it into a format that I can do something with and I can use. So we know the benefits of a well-functioning PLC are that it forms a group of highly professional, qualified teachers to form this collective responsibility for the students that they're concerned with, and then they can go forward and do things and implement things with their students. And so that collective teacher efficacy is the most highly effective effect size according to Hattie's research. So the ultimate goal of PLCs is to put that into action in your school building. So we definitely know the benefits of PLCs. So if we can get these 4 things in action in our school buildings, then we're going to see school improvements. One of the biggest things, though, is just the capacity of our humans to do all these things and carve out that time and get those things done in an effective way. So what I'm going to try to show here is how we can get first Notebook LM to create a customized data source that'll help PLCs be a little bit more effective. So how can we leverage tools like AI and especially Notebook LM, and also inputting maybe some school AI to analyze student data, create targeted groups using based on the teachers and the school's data, and then especially put it into action by creating aligned resources. So that's where, we're going to go with this. So with all that being said, just really quickly, if you would, in the chat, if you have used Notebook LM before, just type a yes or a no to having used Notebook LM. I'm getting a feel for our potential Notebook LMs. So it looks like it's about slightly, I feel like it's about 50-50. Okay, so that's good to know. So while we're talking right now, if you would open up an extra tab and a clear tab and open up Notebook LM, feel free to multitask. I'm sure a lot of you are. And so I'm going to do a really quick overview of Notebook LM, really quick tour of it just to show the basic features. This isn't going to be a deep dive into all of the features and limitations of Notebook LM, but some of the key ones, and then show you the specific use cases for PLCs. So Notebook LM is an AI that is source or application that is created by Google and is powered by Google's large language model Gemini. So it's been around for a little over a year and has been changing really, really rapidly. When it first came out, it was kind of a sleeper, fairly buggy, very beta, and people hadn't really heard about it. But I'd say about midsummer, it really started taking off, and they started making a lot of improvements to it, so that now it's one of the next big things. The kind of idea behind Notebook LM is that the designers or the engineers behind it were seeing that people were doing a lot of things digitally in a lot of different places. We're reading digitally all over the place. We're asking questions, doing Google searches in lots of different locations all over online. We're writing, we're taking notes. So all of these things are being done in different locations. So why not create something where you can do all of those things in one place and then add a powerful AI behind the scenes to bring all of that information together and do what AIs do best, which is make connections. So that's what the design idea is behind Notebook LM. So we know that AIs are really fast, they're really powerful tools, and they're good at making connections. So that's what Notebook LM does. And the key thing that makes it different is that it does this using the sources that you upload to it. So unlike Gemini out in the real world externally, where it is drawing from its sources everything that Gemini has scraped from the internet and put into its large language model, Notebook LM is using as its reference base the sources that you upload to it. So you have a lot more certainty about what it's using as its information source, because you know that you have added your standard course of study or your MTSS references from the state of North Carolina or your district. So because you have listed them right there on the side, and whenever you prompt it for information, it will actually cite the sources that you've uploaded. So it gives you an added degree of certainty about the information that's being uploaded. It also reduces the likelihood of hallucinations. It doesn't eliminate it because it's still an AI, right? But it reduces it some. So this whole thing is called source grounding. If you're, an AI person, it's also there's a lot of other names for it. So it creates a personalized AI. It reduces the risk of inaccuracies. It also might make it a little bit less creative, right? So it's because it's not drawing on every single thing that Gemini has access to, unless you specifically tell it to, right? You can make it go outside of itself, but it is going to tend to stay inside and just look at the sources that you've uploaded to it. Okay, so really quickly, the types of sources that you can upload to it is basically almost anything. Okay, so that's what this screen means. The type of thing that you can't upload are Excel files. So if you wanted to upload data, you'd have to save it as a PDF first. But otherwise, PDFs, text files, audio files, YouTube videos, it'll access your Google Docs and your Google Slides, so you can connect it to your drive, websites, a lot of information sources. Okay, so before I go to the next thing, are there any questions just about kind of the basics or anything that you've heard about Notebook LM that you've got a question about? Okay. All right, so that's all kind of like the techie side of it. You can put a lot of stuff in it. 50 sources times 500,000 words, that's a lot. We'll talk about saving your notes, so that if you query something in there, how do you get it out of there? I'll go back and correct my typo there. Sharing with your domain only, rather, which means basically I can share it with anybody inside DPI, and you can share it with anybody inside your school district, but you can't share it with me, and vice versa. So right now there's no sharing outside of domains. We're really hoping that Google changes that because it kind of makes it a pain in the neck. But right now that's one limitation. Like any AI, Notebook LM is not a calculator, so it's bad at math. You can ask it about numbers, but don't ask it to calculate numbers. I just did a test of it this afternoon just to make sure that that was still pretty true. And I had a sample set of quiz data from way back when, and I asked it to actually grade the quiz, like look at student 1 through 30, and here's all of their quiz answers, 1 through 10, and to calculate the number of kids who got the right answer, the wrong answer, and how many blah blah blah, and it straight up got it wrong. So it won't actually, tell you 50% of the kids got, the answers correct or incorrect. But it will tell me student A got number 1, this answer. It'll tell me about the numbers, but it won't actually calculate the percentage correct or incorrect. So that's just a subtle thing to keep in mind. Double check any math that it does. It'll make you a test that contains math problems, and you can ask it to make an answer key, but I would check the answer key just to make sure that it was calculating the answers correctly. Yes, there is a pro version. I agree. I've never needed the pro version. I've looked at it just to see what the differences are, but so far I've never thought that I should give them our money. Exactly. And then it's restricted to over 18, so this is definitely a teacher tool. Okay. Google says that this is as far as the privacy policy goes, that this is that they don't use this information to train Gemini. So but in general, any private information or sensitive information, you should just make sure that you're keeping track of, and you anonymize your student data and things like that. So we kind of caution about that, but they also specifically say that they don't use the information put into Notebook LM to train their Gemini AI. Okay, so that is. We'll talk about the audio overview here in a couple of minutes, so definitely go back to doing that. So what I'd like to do, if you've been in Notebook LM and you've kind of clicked around a little bit, then we're going to jump over there in just a second, but here's the link. If you are not over there yet, then I'm going to, that's where we're going next. So go ahead and either click on this link or open up a tab to go over to Notebook LM, and you'll have to say create Notebook LM or explore. You might have to click past a couple of screens to get into it, and eventually you'll see this screen. So you've got 3 panels. It usually looks like this, and over here on the left-hand side, you'll see a button to add a source. You'll see a center panel, which once you start adding sources, this will fill up with information, and you can ask a question or write a prompt down here in the middle. And then over on the right-hand side, there's this thing called a deep dive conversation, which in popular lingo, we refer to it as a podcast. And then there are some pre-formatted prompts over here, a study guide, a briefing doc, a frequently asked questions, and then a timeline. So it will just automatically create those things for you. You don't have to prompt it. So those sit over here. And then whenever you prompt it for some information, the note will show up over here in the center, but if you want to save it, you can click a little save note right here, and the saved notes will all show up over here on the right-hand side. So that's just kind of a tour of the screen. When you give your notebook a title, the title will show up over here. You can always change the title to whatever you want it to be. And to get back over to all of your notebooks, you would click on the little logo up here in the upper left-hand corner. So that's a quick tour of the screen. Okay, so with all of that being said, you might be wondering, what can I use it for that will help my PLCs? So I have a couple of ideas already kind of cooked up. So integrating literacy across the curriculum. We were working with a district who wanted to improve literacy, and they were middle school, and they wanted to get their middle school teams together along with their encore or specials teachers and have some units where they had just literacy integrated across the curriculum. And it's a great idea, but middle school teachers, we want to kind of collaborate and have it be with a common theme or something like that. So how do we do that? How do we decide on something where it kind of all integrates and goes together? And one way to do it would be to create a notebook where you all collaborate together and do that. So we're going to show you an example of how that might occur. There's another example here where we have a notebook created for MTSS and MLs, and then connect it to interventions and then customize with your actual data. You can also create standards-based notebooks with resources and then also add interventions. You can create any kind of notebook that you want, but I want to show you a couple of ways to make this a little bit easier for people to actually put these things together. So on the next screen, I want to start off with this MTSS and ML example. So if you are on slide 19, go ahead and click on this link down here at the bottom so we can explore one way that things are set up and see if this makes sense to you, because I'd love to get your input on this. So if you click on this link, it's going to open up this document. And if you have not been, how many of you I'm going to look at your cameras aren't on, so I can't see if you raise your hands. But I am a new adopter of documents with tabs. Okay, they have been around since October, but apparently I ignored them till just recently. So over here on the left-hand side, I know, actually, what? Okay, so I know I'm being recorded, so I should settle down. So over here on the left-hand side, we've got tabs. Instead of just having this giant document that's like 7,000 pages long, right? Google invented tabs, or just having a folder with a bunch of documents in it. So over here, this is the main page, and this is the index page. So experts in MLs and MTSS all got together and said, if we wanted to support multilingual learners within the MTS framework, what do people need to know? And people would sit down and just read all of these documents, and they would attend all of these professional learnings, and they would, just know all of this information. And people are thinking, that's a lot to remember, right? But who can remember all of that? AI can remember all that. So why don't we put all this information in one spot and upload it to a notebook? And then you can just jump over to your notebook and start asking it questions, right? Now you might be thinking, but what would I ask it? Where do I start? Because maybe you're a person who you might be very expert at it, but you might be at a loss for where to start. So tab number 2 is a prompt set. And apparently Teams is as excited as I am because it gave me balloons. So prompt set 1 is understanding the MTSS framework. So you can, once you get all of your documents uploaded to Notebook LM, you could just start asking it questions because you know what you want to start asking it about. But you could jump over to this first tab and take a look at some of these prompts to get started. Now, just like any AI, Notebook LM is going to start suggesting questions or suggesting prompts once you get going with it, right? It'll have some suggestions, and then you can start taking off in any kind of direction that you want to go with. So here are some suggestions for understanding the MTSS framework. Tab number 3 is how to support MLs within the MTSS framework. And you're going to start to see, as this gets longer and longer, that it really goes off in a bunch of different directions, right? And then there's some customizations suggested in here. So, for example, on this one, it says, what are the key components of the MTSS framework that support MLs effectively and then you can customize it a little bit by changing your grade level, inserting your content area or the discipline. So these are just suggestions to kind of get people going in the direction that they might be thinking of. So, and then the next one is on data analysis for multilingual learners. And then the last one is starting to think about instructional strategies. So the way this would work, so if we want to kind of start back up here with the index of resources, there are just a few kind of tips to know about when you're creating your first notebook, is because some of these documents are really easy and straightforward to upload. So if you were to click on this first one for meeting the needs of EL English learners without disabilities, you'll see that this first one is a PDF. So if I open this one up, I wish I could just click on this link and then add it to Notebook LM, but unfortunately, or just quirkily, with Notebook LM, PDFs have to be downloaded and then uploaded. Okay, so you guys would go over here and click on this link, open it up. I'm just going to open it again because my screen's weird. And then download it. And a lot of times just knowing where your PDF downloads to is half the battle, exactly. So create a form, create a location in your documents for where you're going to save it. So I'm going to create a new folder and call it MLs and MTSS. And that way everything is just going to go to one location. And so once it gets into its little folder, then you jump over to your Notebook LM. And I'm going to create my new folder. And so there's that screen that we talked about the first time. And to upload a PDF, you just click Add Source, choose File, and go find it. And of course, I've got 500 million folders. So there's my folder, MLs and MTSS. So I open it up and I click on it and it just uploads. And as soon as it uploads, right, Notebook LM immediately starts giving you some information. So your source shows up over here. And if you click on it, you can see that, first of all, this beautiful source that they created with all of this, formatting, lovely, right, turns itself into words. So AI just takes the information and it gives you a quick little summary. It gives you some key topics. It gives you a summary over here. And you can start asking it questions immediately. So, really, really quickly to do it. So it's as fast as your internet's going to be. And then if you want to continue creating your notebook, you would just keep opening up your PDFs, downloading them, and uploading them. If you've got a Google slide deck, Let me find ones that is a actual, most of these are PDFs. If you have something in your Google Drive, as soon as you open it, it'll look at your drive and you can just add it directly from your drive. So there's no downloading and uploading with Google Docs or Google Slides. That'll just access your drive directly. If you find something that is a link, so we have this folder, this website right here. All you do there is copy the link and go over to your notebook, open it up, and click website and add the link. And the only time you might run into a problem with either a website or a YouTube video is if it's behind a paywall. So that would mean that the owner of the website has put some kind of restriction on it where they don't allow it to be put, into a third-party site. So if you get a little red notification or a little, triangle or something like that, that means that it's been blocked for some reason. But for the most part, things, tend to go up. So that's all there is to that. And so building the idea behind these docs was to put all of the resources that for these types of things in one location, just to make accessing the information easy. So you didn't have to go hunting on, all of these different the resources for MTS and SN and MLs all over the place. So it would all be in one spot, since we can't share notebooks outside of our domains at this time. Your own maybe county pacing guides. Once you had like the main information in there, you would customize it and personalize it for your own situation.
We literally asked to support our ML/ESL department last week, and we're meeting either tomorrow or next week to plan for it. Like, you are amazing.
That's great. I'm so glad you got. Yeah.
Such serendipitous time. Like, yes.
That's so well, and this will take you to set it up. It might take you a half an hour to get them all downloaded and uploaded, and you can share it with as many people. Like the share button is in the upper right-hand corner.
I'm so excited, and I've used Notebook. Like, I've met with you before. We've talked about it. Like, I love Notebook, so I'm so excited.
Great, that is awesome, excellent, great timing. Okay, so the next one is set up really, really similarly. We worked with the academic standards department on a similar kind of project where we were talking about the literacy problem. And so this link right here takes you over to the same type of document where all of the literacy and instruction standards are located all in one spot. So we've got the resource name, the link to the document, and then prompts. This one has a little bit of a prompting guide, just in case you're unfamiliar. And then the prompt sets on the second page, or on the third tab. So prompt set 1 on how you would find out where literacy might be in your existing standards, and then how you might plan literacy aligned instruction. And then this was the problem of how you would align your cross-curricular planning. And so these were created by the academic standards ELA folks over there. So they took care to make sure that they looked at, integrated the lists into all of their work, so that the content area standards were integrated into your instructional standards. So that would be that one. Okay, so the original letter showed is not. Yes, you're right, Kelly. So this document that I was showing over here, like when you look at this is a Google Doc. And if I'm answering your question correctly, and I think the chat did too, exactly, this is just showing all of the sources in a Google Doc to make it sort of one-stop shopping for what would I put into my Notebook LM. And the Google Doc is just a regular Google Doc. Yeah, cool. Okay. And you never know when Notebook LM might make a change and all of a sudden we can share notebooks. They might do it tomorrow, and this is just, nice to have. Let's see, when adding student data to a notebook, do we need to remove any identifying information? Correct. So it would be best practice to anonymize data, I think. But on the other hand, this is under your under a district's Google dashboard. So if it's in your Google Drive, it's in that same hosted space. So it's covered under the same privacy protections, and it's not being used to train the AI. So I would say a district would have those individual conversations with their technology department to make sure that they're handling student data as safely as possible. Yeah. Another example, we were talking about a standards aligned notebook would be linked right here. So DPI's academic standards science department created a couple of years worth of training on all of the new science standards and the science and engineering practices and the cross-cutting concepts and just all of that. They have webinars, they have slide decks, and they uploaded them all to their Science Hub, which is located in Canvas. And and it was a ton of information, but also hours of training if you were to go back and actually have to watch all of that. So one way to make it accessible would be to download it and put it all into your own Notebook LM. One of the difficulties with this is that you can't read a link directly out of Canvas because it treats it like a paywall because Canvas is not a regular website. So it's all downloaded into this link right here. So it's not, this was the first one that I did, so it's not collated into a nice document yet, but I'm going to work on it. So you would go to either, go get your standards out of the standards folder, and then this folder right here, the Science Hub PD, is where you would individually collect all of the little PDFs for their webinars, their slide decks, and the videos that they created. And so eventually this will all be in a Google Doc the way the other ones were. But this is all of the slide decks that they did for all of their training and all the webinars that they did for all of their training leading up to the release and the implementation of the new science standards. So if you're a science teacher and you want to create a science notebook for all of your, for the new science standards, once you get this all in there, and then also add the information about inquiry-based teaching, the new questioning form, the QFT, all of that sort of thing. You can upload it there and it integrates it all right into how you're creating your new lesson plans. Okay. One more idea I think I have in here. I really love this idea and want to make sure. Yep. This one is a really simple way to do some student feedback using a notebook. And so if you click on this example, it takes you over to just a really simple, just a really quick example. If you were grading student work and had a rubric for it, you could upload the student work and the rubric to a Notebook LM, and it would give you student feedback for it that you could use. So I've got an example over here of how this works. And might be able to just give you a really quick idea of it. So we taught the outsiders a lot when I was in when I taught 7th grade. And so I had Notebook LM, or I had ChatGPT to pretend to be a 7th grader who had to write a reflection on Stay Gold Pony Boy. I had my 7th grader make a few mistakes and basically do an okay job of reflecting on that quote. So here's my 7th grader's response. I'll make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. It's a little bit small. But it's also in that folder, so you could read it. So, you know, they said that it made them think about holding on to stuff. They didn't really relate it to the character a whole lot, but they did talk about themselves pretty much. So that was their response. And then I had Magic School write me a rubric for it. So there's the rubric. The one thing that I told Magic School the North Carolina standard, but when the rubric printed out, it didn't include it didn't actually cite the standard. So I would go back and fix that and actually put North Carolina Standard Course of Study on there just for reference. But anyways, that was a little bit of a backwards reflection there. And then the only thing you need to do here is tell Notebook to grade the writing. Now, if you had a whole class set in here, you'd have to be more specific, but using the rubric. And so it does the same thing every single time. One of the things I really like about it is it always gives me a 9. So it tells me that I show a basic understanding of the theme Stay Gold Pony Boy, that I establish a connection between the theme and a personal experience, because that's basically all I did. But then it tells me that I lack any specific text evidence because I didn't put any in there. So it does a pretty good job of, grading it exactly according to the rubric. And so the next thing that you could do as a teacher is you could have it, you could take this as the writing, and then you could use this to, write a, actual feedback that you would give to the student, right? This is the details, but this is too much to give to a student. You might, write something smaller and more personalized to give actually back to the student. But one of the things, there's a study that I cite in one of my wakelets on student feedback and AI that shows based on 30 million graded assignments in Canvas. So it's a huge sample size. It was recently published that you get poorer feedback on graded work, on human graded work, if your name is at the end of the alphabet than if it's at the beginning of the alphabet, because and I just think it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, thank you for proving what we all know, that if your science notebooks are graded at the end of the night on a Sunday night rather at the beginning, then they're going to be, it's just, people wear out. And so one of the things that I feel like is a benefit of AI grading is that the AI doesn't, lose its energy, right? There's consistency. The thing you have to guard against is that your AI is doing it fairly and in an unbiased way. And so the human still needs to be involved in looking at this feedback and making sure that they aren't, that it isn't, doing it inaccurately, and that there isn't any bias in the way it's giving its feedback to individual students. So it's definitely, there's some advantages to it, but there's also some things that the teacher has to make sure that they're looking out for as well. So I wanted to share that with you as well. And I have a couple more minutes, so I wanted to show you one more thing just to make sure, especially for people who are new to Notebook LM. One of the things that is a huge benefit is, to Notebook LM, both on the teacher side as for the adult use, but then also for creating resources for students, is the audio overview feature of Notebook LM. In all of your notebooks, you can create a this audio overview over here on the right-hand side. And I did one earlier for this giant ML and MTSS notebook because I knew it was going to take a few minutes for it to actually create itself. This one has 19 sources, so the audio overview is 30 minutes long. But if you have fewer sources, they're usually around 9 minutes long, so they're shorter. And so this one is 2 voices talking. It'll take all of the sources that you have uploaded and summarize them, and then create a podcast based on them. And the other feature that they've added since December is this interactive mode. So I wanted to go ahead and play this for you and see if I could get the interactive mode to work. So this worked one time, then the other time it didn't. So we're going to see how this goes. Maybe it's not going to work. My audio overview hosts are not interested in talking with us today, so I've put them on the spot by talking about them too much. So when you're talking to people on a webinar, your audio overview people either may or may not want to talk. But if you're doing it live in person and not using your mic, maybe it's because I'm using my mic and I'm also asking the webinar to use the mic. So that might be the problem. Too many mics trying to be used. But if you're doing this and you're not using your webinar mic, then when you click join, the audio overview hosts will stop talking and they'll say, hey, somebody wants to join us. And then you can ask the podcast hosts a question, and let me pause that. And they will, if you say your name, they'll repeat your name back to you, and then they'll answer your question in line with their conversation. And what I really love about this for classroom use is that if you had the kids prepare for questions about whatever the topic is, I created a notebook about the Scotch bonnet, seashell, and North Carolina state symbols. If you had the kids kind of brainstorm their questions about whatever the topic is, they could ask their questions, use their name. The podcast hosts would repeat their name back to them so they would feel included in the conversation, and then it accurately answers their question and within the podcast. And so it would be a way to use this resource with students in kind of a whole group sort of way.
Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving into a really important topic today: how California supports English learner students, specifically those with disabilities. We've got a ton of resources to unpack, from policy documents and educator guides to research briefs and online materials.
It's quite the mix.
Yeah, the goal is to give you a clear understanding of how to best support the
Yeah, so the podcast hosts sound pretty realistic. So far, we tried it yesterday to limit the amount of time, and that customize box that says generate and customize, and we told it to make a podcast that was less than 5 minutes long, and it did make it shorter. It didn't keep it under 5 minutes, but it made it shorter than the first one that we created. So we gave it some direction, and it seemed like it did keep it shorter. And so that when you create a new podcast, there's this customize button right here, and you can give it some direction. And so we tried to force it to be shorter by telling it to summarize and giving it a time limit. Yet, Antonia, I agree. The audio overview could be a way to create accessible resources for students. That's another way. And so when you create a podcast, over here with the 3 dots, you can download it, and that's the way you get that audio out. As soon as you close your notebook, a lot of times, not every time, but most of the time, that audio overview deletes itself. So if you create one and you like it, make sure you download it You can always recreate it, but it might not be exactly the same. It'll be pretty close, but it might not be exactly the same. Okay, any other questions? Let's see. So I'm going to make sure that I touched on everything here. This is the one on the state symbols. So that's just a real quick example of adding standards and then some, specific things that would be more student-facing materials and how you can create accessible things for students. This is just a list of some other ideas that we've been sort of, encountering along the way. They're not specifically PLC related, but are just other ways to use Notebook LM. And one of the things that I heard, just a couple of days ago, and I think is a neat idea, is uploading webinars for basically anything, new software. If you're, your tech department or your ITFs, if you're supporting new things, you basically create an expert database, and you can query that when you're having to go troubleshoot things. I'm going to talk to, I hear, about just all of the webinars that we have been creating for all of these new systems that are coming online. What if we uploaded those webinars so that people who can't attend live are going to would be able to ask the experts behind the scenes if they can't attend the webinars. So those are just some extra ways to think about things. Also over here, I know we have a lot of people who are getting their national boards or their ISTE certifications, and we definitely don't want them using AI to write things for them, but there's a lot of questions about whether or not our artifacts are aligning with the standards. So you could have the standards in Notebook LM and then upload your artifact and look for alignment and non-alignment. We had one district was uploading their pacing guides because they were redoing their pacing guides over the summer. And so they uploaded pacing guides and they looked for alignment or instances of where they had DOK and rigor. And so they looked for instances of where they had rigor and where they were missing some levels of DOK. And so it was looking for it, but then also looking for maybe where it was missing. So another way to get AI to do that work for you. Okay, lots of resources here to share with you in the Wakelets. I update these sort of all of the time to add breaking news there about what's happening. Notebook LM is one of those things that is changing all the time. So whenever new information comes out, I try to update it in the notebook. Or in the Wakelet. And I'm definitely going to do another one of these PLC-oriented AI sessions to add things about how you can create resources using School AI and some of the other AIs, because we are there's just a lot of potential in all of these. But I appreciate you guys, and I'll hang around for a few minutes and ask questions or answer questions if you've got things to share, because I feel like this was a lot. But and I dropped the feedback form. Please fill that out. We will definitely want to know what other things you would like to see for these AI webinars. And other than that, that's all for me. Thank you very much.